the Nonprofit Podcast, powered by Donorbox.
Are you ready to turn crisis into opportunity? It's not often that we get to say a crisis can be a good thing, but in the world of nonprofits, it can be the key to unlocking your organization's potential. Welcome to the Nonprofit Podcast. I'm Jenna, the nonprofit advocate here at Donorbox. We're here each week with practical actions you can use today to take your nonprofit to the next level tomorrow. Today, fundraising coach Cara is here with us to discuss a topic that might seem counterintuitive: how to turn crisis into opportunity. We'll explore how nonprofits can leverage the lessons learned during a crisis to emerge stronger, more resilient, and better equipped for the future. Cara, I can't wait to dive in and hear your insights on this critical topic. You want to get started?
Yes, let's. There is a lot of talk about what's ahead right now. So I think it's a very good time to have this conversation.
Yep. I imagine there's a little anxiety when thinking about what it might take to navigate an organization through times of uncertainty.
It is hard not to get nervous about the future of the economy right now. And I think nonprofits have likely felt the effects of inflation and the current economic downturn. But I do think that 2023, like the past handful of years, will be filled with uncertainty for many nonprofits, and it's going to take time to figure out how to navigate that and overcome it. There are a few things I'm seeing that we'll want to keep an eye on within the nonprofit sector, and I'll share those in just a second. But I also want to say that I remember feeling anxious thinking about fundraising through the Great Recession and through the onset of the pandemic. Some organizations floundered while others came through those rough patches just fine. And it will be the case with all that's ahead of us right now, too.
So, what do you think fundraising looks like in 2023?
Well, here are a few things I have my eye on this year. First, donors are down and dollars are up. This is certainly not new, as it's been a trend for 10 years or so, but the number of donors supporting organizations keeps declining. And that's what's alarming. When the number of donors decline, it's like water flowing out of a leaky bucket. Pretty soon the bucket's empty. The next thing I'm seeing right now is that donors are supporting fewer organizations. And then lastly, and this is noticeable everywhere, not just in the nonprofit sector, but we as people are distracted. It might look like we have much shorter attention spans, and maybe we do, but information is coming at us faster than ever before, and it's hard to communicate our message so that it results in action. Donors are so distracted. So those are the three things that I'm keeping an eye on this year.
Okay, so to recap, dollars are up, but donors are down. We've all seen this. Donors are supporting fewer organizations, and our donors' attention spans are getting shorter. That's a lot.
It is a lot, and they're impacting most every organization. But when you iron out solutions to these problems, it ultimately leads to a more sustainable organization. And with the right fundraising program in place, you can really overcome it and ensure that your organization not only survives, but thrives during times like this.
So those are some really tough challenges to overcome, but I know that you've got some solutions up your sleeve. That's why we've got you here. So care to share some of those with us today?
Yeah, it all boils down to really great communication delivered to the right people at the right time, and that can do wonders for an organization. In fact, organizations that continued communicating, that continued asking for support, that acknowledged their supporters and accounted for the donations they were receiving came through the Great Recession, and they came through the pandemic just fine, or maybe they even came through stronger afterwards. But those that didn't, that pulled back, had a much more difficult time or even floundered and maybe still haven't recovered. There are a few that haven't recovered and just completely shut their doors. Right. So really great communication, mitigate that risk of what could be.
So how do you apply that really great communication? Let's go ahead and tackle the first threat. Donors are down. How does communicating improve this?
Great question. I think we need to do two things to fix this. First, introduce new donors to our cause, and then focus on retaining them and retaining the existing donors you have too. But I think most every organization really wrestles with attracting new supporters. We've talked about that before on this podcast. We've talked about it in webinars.
And one of the top, if not the top questions we get here at Donorbox, I know you see this a lot, is how can we bring in new donors into our organization?
Yeah, that is a common one for sure. And I think what engages new supporters and keeps them is communicating with them. So sharing, like I mentioned before, sharing the right message at the right time to the right people. Take a look at your current supporter base to understand what your typical supporter looks like, and then get into the community and be where those people are. If you're an organization that offers service opportunities, perhaps give a talk at a local service club meeting. However it is, you can get in front of your potential supporters, whether it's through events, social media, networking, asking people to introduce you to others, you have to do it. And then you personalize your outbound communication to those people to make those supporters feel like you're talking directly to them. You share information that resonates with them, and you show them gratitude and impact of your mission. So if you think about your communication with new supporters like a conversation, keep that conversation going. Find out what resonates with them. Ask them for input. Ask them to come alongside you in this big problem you're solving in this world, and they'll be more likely to stay engaged once they get engaged because they know that you know them.
But how can organizations make sure that they're one of the few organizations that these people support?
Right. So donors are supporting fewer organizations than they did a few years ago. So the answer to that is donor engagement. In fact, I was reading a study from the Gallup Company, and they reported that donors invest money and they invest their effort in charitable organizations when they feel a strong emotional and psychological connection. So they may donate to other organizations occasionally, but they keep going back to the causes that emotionally engage them. And so good donor engagement, it deepens the relationship with that donor, it grows the affinity for your organization, and it increases giving, especially when you're telling stories, people overcoming a challenge, or whatever it is that your mission delivers. When you share those success stories, when you share the stories of the need for the mission, you really stand out, and your supporters will remember you when they prioritize their giving.
That makes a lot of sense. And you and I talk a lot about donor engagement through a lot of our avenues through Donorbox. And you spoke on this a bit, but how do you actually get donors to engage with your nonprofit? It's easy to say engagement is important. We can do some storytelling, but what are the practical steps you can take to actually make it happen?
I think it boils down to two things. So, quality communication and frequent communication. And those will really boost donor engagement. If you're communicating just once a year when you need money, you are really telling your supporters that the relationship is very one sided. But if you're creating ongoing communication, that continuous conversation over the course of the year, you can delight your supporters. You can convey that you're pursuing a relationship with them and keep them engaged with your good work. And when I say frequent communication, I don't mean send them something every week and call all the time, but just be consistent, not sporadic. I have worked with an organization recently that was very sporadic in their communication. And as a result of that, it's really hard to get people to step in and support financially when there's a big need right now. So if they had communicated more over time, they wouldn't be facing that hurdle right now.
That makes a lot of sense. And I want to loop back to what you said. It shouldn't be communication just about the ask. So it's not transactional, it's relational, it's inspiring. Sometimes it's feel good, sometimes it's not so feel good. Transparency, there's a lot of layers to that. When you talk about frequent communication, what about people's short attention spans? Surely we can't solve that. So how can we get them to pay attention to our message over and over and over again?
You're right. We can't solve it. We have shorter attention spans. We have busier schedules, and our supporters do too. I think it first comes down to knowing in your heart, in your mind, and at the tip of your tongue why you do what you do and what makes you unique. When you can commit it to memory and it's expressed in all that you do, you'll be able to share it really clearly and really consistently, no matter how you're delivering the message. So if it's in a written email, or if it's in a mailed fundraising appeal, or if it's in person over a cup of coffee or at a networking event, you can share why you care. And internalizing that why makes externalizing the message, it makes it sincere and authentic. And people pick up on that. People understand when it's sincere and authentic. So I think that will help you stand out and get past that attention span and get past the distraction. And then for the message, knowing your audience and how they best receive your message helps get and keep their attention. And there are still so many ways to capture and keep that attention.
So I want to talk about that for a second. Knowing your audience. That can be a tricky one for some organizations.
Mhm.
So, a little tip that I have here is using tools like Google Analytics. That can really help determine the best way and most effective messaging for your specific audience. So,
Mhm.
you can use this data. And I know sometimes data can sound like a scary word when we're talking about copywriting and messaging, but you can use this data to see which of your social media posts are performing well. So, maybe it's GIF or it's a photo or a certain type of messaging, and you can monitor that response to your outreach and awareness programs. And then when you do this, you'll be able to tailor your messaging and make it more relevant and engaging for your supporters, which ultimately helps you stand out with those distracted donors because you're understanding what they like and what they want to see based on those analytics that Google gives you.
Also, on the topic of distraction, I was thinking about this. You know how bad multitasking is for your concentration? Well, multi messaging is also distracting for your supporters. So, sharing clear and consistent messages across those channels, it's attention getting and it's memorable. So, I encourage people to be really clear in their messaging and not be afraid to communicate seemingly the same message over and over again, because we know it takes several touch points before people really absorb that. But you can test it, like you mentioned, through Google Analytics. You can see which messages are resonating. You can check your open rates and test those subject lines on email messaging and see, are you being clear, and ask people within your organization and outside of your organization to take a good look and see if you are communicating clearly.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I want to loop back to attention spans. I know I'm really harping on this, but talking about different types of content and messaging, something that I'm seeing is that video is a really great way to catch and hold audience attention. And as we move into 2023, it's going to be so important to make sure that video is a part of your messaging strategy. So whether it's short social media clips or longer format, or if it's reels or TikToks, whatever that may be, it doesn't have to be overproduced or anything like that.
Mhm.
But I think it needs to be a part of your plan. Would you agree there?
Oh, absolutely. That high quality content that gives a good user experience, and it captures and then recaptures attention and it makes it memorable. Yeah, absolutely.
And this is something that organizations can do on their cell phones,
Hmm.
right?
Hmm. Hmm.
Like I said, it doesn't have to be overproduced, but I think that's a really great way to get your messaging out there. And it's really engaging. And better yet, if it's you or someone from your organization, then they get to see how authentic you're being, which loops back to that engagement.
Sincere and authentic. Absolutely.
Okay, I'm going to take a deep breath for a second. This is a lot, Kara. So, how do you digest it all? How do you apply it to programs and
Mhm.
operations at your nonprofit?
Yeah, it's easy to talk about it in theory, and then it's a little harder to put it to practice for sure. And it is a lot, and it's easier said than done. I've been there, I know it. I remember in one of my first development roles, I was working with a fraternal foundation and I was in charge of communications. And communicating was my job, but I was buried in so many daily tasks or putting out little mini fires that came up that spending time writing the newsletter or sending the impact postcard or whatever it was fell to the wayside until I was like, oh no, we should probably get that out yesterday. But then that lapse deadline butted into an upcoming project. And then a lot of times I just thought, oh, I guess we'll skip it and just move on to the next one. But for every missed communication opportunity, it was a missed touch point with a supporter or a potential supporter, and fundraising slipped. And I understand the challenge of creating consistent, cohesive messaging and creating a strategy for it. But it's also really easy to put off when other demands are piling up. But we know that by making your supporters feel like their contributions are important and necessary for your organization, you can keep them engaged and improve your relationship with them, and you raise more money. But I understand how hard it is to go it alone. It's really hard to keep all the plates spinning and not drop them. And I hear it from our Donorbox organizations a lot. So we created a Donorbox Academy course to go through this together with anyone who wants to. It's called Fear Free Fundraising. And it's a masterclass with live group coaching to put some really great practices into action so that you're not afraid of what's ahead.
I bet a lot of our listeners were nodding their heads relating to all of that, especially putting out many fires throughout the day, throughout the week. So I know that they're not alone, but why take a class?
Well, fundraising is tough. And then communicating is tough if it doesn't come naturally to you. And there's so much information out there. There is so much. And there's a lot of really good information out there, but it's hard to filter it all through. Just thinking as you're reading a blog post or something, will this work for my organization? Is this accurate? Just that kind of thing. And so we've learned through experience what works and what doesn't. Our team has learned how to apply tough concepts, and we've helped the organizations that have allowed us to, we've helped them find what's a good fit for them and their organization. So I guess to answer your question, why take a class? Well, it's so you don't have to figure this out all on your own. It's a shortcut, I guess. And we all need to save some time, right?
I can remember early days in my nonprofit career where I would Google questions, just like what we're seeing our organizations ask us. How do I get donors? How do I market this event? And this is something that I could have really used. This is something that I really could have used to know that there's a trustworthy source and that it's all in one place and have people walking alongside you. So that brings me to my next question. Students won't be navigating this course alone, right?
No way. When you walk through with a coach like we do with our Donorbox organizations, we've already gleaned the best information, and our team is there each week helping to explain how to apply the concept, providing some examples, showing the best of the best and samples and things like that, and then providing the time to set aside to focus on learning and doing. When you commit to a live class, once a week for a few weeks, you set aside that time, and those other things just fall to the wayside so you can focus. And so creating that comprehensive plan is hard to do when it's squeezed in as another task on a to-do list. So we're taking time to make the communication plan, to put that plan to action for your organization. It's hard work. It's not easy, but you're planned, and those better results happen when you take the time to do the work, and you feel better. I feel like you could sleep at night when you have it done, right?
Yeah. So what's the structure?
Yeah. We have 4 1-hour-long live interactive group coaching sessions, and those will be Thursdays in March at 2 p.m. Eastern. We have real life examples of what's currently working in fundraising, and we talk through each of these things that we discussed. So from knowing why you do what you do to communicating the right thing to the right people at the right time and putting a good fit plan in place for you. So it's set and you can just put it in motion. And then we also make sure that you have templates and resources and the guided coaching you need and the time set aside to have your questions answered. We have even scheduled in a live donation page review from our Donorbox experts. And then everything you create will be yours. You can download it. You can keep it forever. That is what is available in the masterclass. And I'm really excited. We start March 2nd.
And what I think the best part is that you get to block out time on your calendar, like you said, to be really intentional about working on your plan. I don't find that there's many opportunities to get to do this. So this is really great. But what if someone can't attend? What if something comes up?
Yep, absolutely. And I've already received a few emails with that question, but the recordings from the live sessions will be uploaded into the course the day after. We know that many of our course attendees have another day job and can't attend the live session, or they want to, take a break and get some much needed time away, or the time zone just doesn't allow for it. And that's okay. There will be access to the class and the materials until the end of the year. So they will be in there.
So how can someone register?
Well, that's the easy part. You can find all the information you need for the Fear-Free Fundraising Masterclass at academy.donorbox.org. It's a quick sign up, and then the live class begins, like I said, on March 2nd. And I have a special promo code for anyone who's listening to the podcast who wants to sign up. The promo code is $20 off, and it's PODCAST. So podcast is the promo code.
Excellent. Well, there you have it.
Thanks so much for having me, Jenna. It's always good to have to be on this side of the conversation. Thank you.
Of course. And everyone, will be sure to provide the link to sign up for Fear-Free Fundraising Masterclass in today's show notes, along with the promo code Cara just mentioned. And thank you for choosing to spend time with the Nonprofit Podcast. I hope you've left with the confidence to take a small step today that will make a big difference tomorrow. Don't forget to download and review the podcast, or give it a thumbs up if you're listening to the Nonprofit Podcast on YouTube. Your review is a great way to help others find us. You're here to help others. We're here to help you. Until next time, stay inspired.
That warm feeling when you help someone, It's not just happiness, it's fulfillment. And we believe it should be available to everyone, from frontline heroes to first-time fundraisers. Our tools empower you to help others. This is our mission. This is Donorbox, helping you help others.